I'm not sure where the line for poverty is, but feel like I'm close, you know? And like we did our taxes one year and I was like, that is like there's not a lot of numbers there, you know?
Yeah.
That's not a big number for what we're taking on the team to do.
Welcome to the Ministry to Marketplace podcast brought to you by Marketable. Today, we're sitting down with Jordan Janes, who tells us his story of going from youth pastor and young life director to oil and gas sales. We cover everything from networking in the church, what to write on your resume, how to communicate your transferable skills in an interview, and what drove the decision to switch careers in the first place. If you're thinking about making the transition from ministry to marketplace, his advice is invaluable. So I won't keep you waiting any longer. Here is my conversation with Jordan Janes. Dude, welcome. So happy that you're here.
So good to see you, man.
Dude, it's been a long time. I was trying to figure out the last time that I saw you. I feel like I saw you at a wedding fairly recently at Carly and Brandon's. But before
Oh, that's
that, I feel like I ran into you at a pastor's conference when Catalyst was back in Dallas, like forever
yeah,
ago. And that's when
yeah.
we were both in ministry. But I feel like that was like the last time that we legitimately hung out.
Yeah, actually, I've had a few conversations in reference to you, and I've been talking to people, and I was like, "Hey, do you know this guy Josh Story?" And they'd be like, "No." I was like, "Oh, well, we went to A&M together, and then also like we used to like run into each other like annually at these conferences, just totally
Yeah,
serendipitously." So
dude, totally.
you actually come in contact or come in conversation with Catalyst, so those together in my mind.
Dude, I don't even think that conference is still around. Not too long ago, I was looking it up and I couldn't find it anywhere. So I don't even know if they're still doing it.
I don't know. Maybe Catalyst also deconstructed or something. I'm
Yeah.
not. It just seems to be the cool thing to do right now, but.
Yeah, RIP. Okay. So first things first, you studied engineering in college and then took the ministry route after college.
Yeah.
So what prompted you to suffer through an engineering degree and then not use it right
Yeah.
out of college?
That is a great idea, and suffer is a fantastic word to choose there because, like, I just feel like so many high school seniors are good at something, but they have very little direction, and that was my story, right? I'm
Yeah.
like a high school senior who was just like super into like mechanical things. I was really good at math and physics, and I wanted to go to A&M. So what else would a like normal white dude who's good at math and physics go to A&M? What would he do other than engineering, right? And so that's kind of how I stumbled in. And, I should have read the writing on the wall pretty early, and I did
Yeah.
not. I struggled mightily. Like I took calculus 3 times, man. And then, I mean, by the grace of God, I got through that program. And it just was funny because, like, I interned at an engineering outfit in East
Okay.
Texas and hated every bit of it, hated it.
Yeah.
And it was so funny to me because they just stuck this guy who was like very personal and like also ADHD. So I just like to go and they
Yeah.
stuck me and they put me drawing things on the computer all day alone. And I just was absolutely miserable. They have a word for it now called depression. I didn't know that's what it was called at the time, but I just was not in a good spot. And then
Yeah.
the following summer, I actually ended up just like stumbling into interning at a youth group because I was going to
Oh,
take
no way.
some of the classes that I had failed, I had the opportunity to retake over the summer. So I was like, all right, I need something that's like half to 3/4 time, that
Yeah.
allows me to like go to school like in the first half of the day, and I can work like from lunch onwards, however late. And
Yeah.
so my aunt actually got me hooked up with this church here in Dallas, and I interned with them, and I loved it, man.
Yeah,
It was
totally.
so much fun. I was doing all the things I was passionate about, like leading Bible studies, and yeah. So that was kind of how I like literally stumbled into ministry.
There's no denying the fact that ministry is the most fun job you'll ever have in your life. And I feel like, especially when you compare it to, okay, I could go sit in a room by myself and do engineering all day on a computer, or I could actually go invest in people's lives and get a front row seat to the ups and downs and everything in between and have the most dynamic relationships I've ever had in my life. Like, it's tough to not say, yeah, that's clearly the path I want, especially at 22 when it's like, okay, invest in people, do something meaningful, or sit in a room all day by myself.
Yeah.
This one sounds like a no brainer.
Oh, so true, man. And I really do feel like it was spirit led at the time. And I
Yeah.
think my entry and both my exit were spirit led because
Yeah.
I came into ministry. I was trying to graduate, and I graduated in 2008. I got to take a victory lap there, but I graduated in 2008, which to your listeners, they may remember that was a really fantastic time to be entering the workforce. I mean, like, let me tell you, jobs were just growing out of left and right and
Just
true.
abundance, a season of
Oh, man, it
abundance.
was crazy, and especially for a guy whose GPA could almost be multiplied by two. Uh, at a point where I was like not getting a ton of looks. I was not getting to step up to home plate and swing very often. And so, I just, again, it was just one of those things where like God continued to open these doors
Yeah.
and ended up like begrudgingly entering ministry because
Yeah.
I made $0. And I was like, is this really what I'm supposed to go do?
Yeah.
So I did it and it was fantastic.
Dude, that's awesome. When people like shift careers, and specifically people in ministry, when they decide to go marketplace after a while, I'm a big believer that no one just like wakes up one day and says, you know what, I'm going to completely reinvent myself. I'm going to do the really difficult work of trying to get a job outside of the industry that I've been in for however long. There's usually a moment of clarity. Something happens that makes them say, okay, it's time for a shift.
Yeah.
Did you have that? Was there one singular moment that made you say, oh, okay, now it's time for me to do something else?
You know, to be honest, there wasn't. And that's what made the decision super difficult for me
Yeah,
because there are so many pros and cons to either side of both just the regular marketplace and then also the ministry world. And
yeah,
like the place I was at in ministry was so much fun. I worked 3 years at a church and then 3 years at Young Life. So all kind of in this like youth ministry umbrella. And I loved it. I had so much fun. Like we were doing good work. I really felt like I was kind of starting to understand the requirements of what it took to be successful.
yeah.
The downside, like I just wasn't making a ton of money. We were pregnant, and it just my wife was going back to school to get her nursing degree, and it was
Mm.
just like one of these things like, man, I'm not sure where the line for poverty is, but I'm feel like I'm close, And like we did our taxes one year, and I was like, that is like, there's not a lot of numbers there.
Yeah,
That's not a big number for what we're taking on the team today. And I mean, God provided it was totally cool, but I was just, it was this weight of like, I feel this, I'm having so much joy here, but I have this stress at the same time.
oh,
And,
totally.
kind of backing up a little bit, my unique design with engineering and just kind of that way of thinking is just, it was an itch that was not getting scratched, right? And so I was having so much fun, but there was a little part of my heart that was like, man, I kind of am wanting a little bit different and more at the same
Yeah,
time. And so really it was very difficult because I just didn't feel like there was a clear sign. I just sat with it. I sought wisdom. I prayed. And at the end of the day, I was like, man, it feels like a faith decision to step out here
yeah,
because I was just having to like trust God to open these doors. And it was wonderful. I mean, he did. So
yeah. Yeah, I feel like that, like you articulated that so well, because I feel like what you just articulated is the tension that most people in ministry feel of, like, there's nothing wrong. Like, I love what I do and I love getting to do ministry, but also I gotta pay my bills. I gotta support my family. I gotta, especially once a kid's on the way, it's like, wow, all of a sudden, because, when you're young, single, and you're making $7 a year, it's like, all right, cool. Like I can figure that out. But
yeah,
then once you actually start to think, okay, now I have a wife, I have kids on the way, I want to buy a house, I want to do all these other things. You start to realize, I don't know if I can. Like I don't know if I literally, like mathematically, can provide for my family the way that I want to on this salary.
yeah.
But to actually make the jump and to say, okay, I'm going to go marketplace to actually provide in a better way financially. A lot of people feel like, am I giving up on my calling? Am I actually like selling out a little bit? Am I bailing on what God's actually called me to? And that's a real struggle for a lot of people. How was that for you?
Yeah, no, it was a total struggle for me. And honestly, like I felt guilt and shame even in my brain just entertaining that thought, right?
Mm,
Because the guys who had mentored me and had poured into me were like, I love them now. And I realize how faithful they were just to like do the basic blocking and tackling of Christian discipleship. And they were the first guys in my life that did that, right? And that
yeah,
was part of the reason that I just feel like God, like, fanned the flame of wanting more of him through college was there was these guys who just finally showed a little bit of attention to me. And I was like, oh my gosh, like the Bible, the word, like Christian discipleship, it is this pool that has a shallow end that anybody can access, but there
Yeah.
is this deep end that is rich. And I had no clue there was that at the end of the pool. I had no
Right. Yeah.
clue.
Totally.
And so I just feel like my eyes have been opened to the beauty of the gospel. And so for me to like think about going into the marketplace, I felt like guilt over that, right? Because it was almost like you've been given this gift and now you're going to like squander it, is how I
Yeah.
felt. And I really wrestled with it. And it's funny because I was in seminary at the time, like paying bukus of money to go
Totally.
read Christian books is all I was doing, right? And then
Yeah.
somebody would tell me what I read. It was great. Uh, and man, I am so thankful for this one leadership class I took at Dallas Seminary with George Hillman because he went through this whole book on like the theology of calling and like the kind of history of pastors and bivocational ministry. And for the first time ever, I heard like calling articulated and that pastors were able and had historically worked two jobs. Like they had
Mhm.
their money job and then they had their Christian like pastoral job. And it just like opened my eyes to be like, whoa, like there is good work that can happen in the workplace. And for the first time ever, it kind of moved from like, uh, I'm doing ministry to like, what has God wired me to do? Right. And it
Yeah.
was like, wow moment. And I know that when I say that, I'm thinking to myself right now, that sounds so elementary and like
No.
first, it's like you are fearfully and wonderfully made, and God has a plan for your life. And I'm like, well, duh, I get
Yeah.
that now, you know?
Yeah.
But at the time, it was just earth shattering to me.
Yeah. Well, I think that's actually really profound because I think it's really easy to view like there's doing ministry, which is working for a church or working for a young life or doing vocational ministry things. But the way that you articulated that and understanding calling, right, is that okay, God has created me in a certain way. And for you, it's like I do have a bent towards math and science and engineering and those things like I can do that. There's not a lot of opportunities in your traditional vocational ministry gig to scratch that itch, right? And so it's like, how do I honor the way that God has made me, but also have this ministry calling? And one of the ways, like I've often told people this, and this rubs people the wrong way, and I get it, but I'll say like working for a church is a job, it's not a calling. And people are like,
Right.
whoa, 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 like what are you saying? It's like no, because like a calling isn't affected by the economy. A calling can't be taken away. And so like you can
Okay.
absolutely lose your job at a church, but that doesn't mean that you've lost your calling. And I think that reframing that of okay, what has God created me to do? What is my calling? And I'm going to do ministry along the way as I do it, and being able to understand that I can honor the way that God has created me in the marketplace while also getting to serve from a ministry standpoint, just
Mm,
like out of joy in my margins. You
yeah.
had, we had talked a little bit before this. Talk to me about the first time that you like got to do ministry things while in the marketplace, and what was that experience like when all of a sudden ministry wasn't your job, but it was just an overflow of just what you got to do because you liked doing it.
Well, it was funny because we prayed, we were kind of at this crossroads and we were praying a lot about do we just go all in? And we had this itch for like international missions kind of thing.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so here's our two choices, right? Marketplace or missions is kind of where our mind was, right? I know
Yeah.
those are like totally different sides of the spectrum here. I'm like, either I'm moving them to Paul and I'm going to help like translate the Bible to these people, or I'm going to go, sell like oil and gas equipment in Houston. That was kind of the two options.
Yeah.
I know they're very different, okay? And it was funny because I prayed and being like, God, like God's heart is for the nations. Is this where you want me? And at the end of the day, I still feel like He wanted me to go do this, right? And it was so funny because all the people groups we were praying over, we moved to Houston, and then they're like literally in my cubicle next to me.
Yeah.
And
Totally.
here's like three Hindus, and I got this one Sikh, who's like got the full on turban and all that stuff. And I'm like, they're right here.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it just was really funny because they presented themselves to me. And I do remember one moment with just a guy who was a colleague. We were just talking about life and I got to share some of my story with him in response to him sharing some real struggles that he was having. And so I
Yeah.
shared my story, and then he's like, "Well, what do you?" He asked a question in regards to it. And I don't want to share any of the details of his story, but he was like, "What do you think it means?" And I basically was like, "Well, I think God's trying to get your attention, you know." And it
Yeah.
was just something super simple like that. It wasn't churchy. And again, I don't know if that guy, if it landed with him, but it was just
Yeah.
this real moment in the moment where you were like, here's my shot, and I need to step up and be brave and do the thing. And it was so much, it's so funny when you're not a professional Christian, like you're not paid for it,
Yeah.
it is so much more like daunting of a task to witness and to go do those things because like the collateral damage, if that goes bad, is bad.
Yeah. Totally.
Like it could not work out well for you. So it was a lot.
So let's talk practicality. You you make a decision. I can go missions. I can go marketplace. You choose marketplace. What do you do first? What does that process look like of going from ministry to landing an actual job?
Okay. Um, I would say somebody told me, and I would share this with our listeners here, right? You already know everybody you need to know. Okay.
That's
That
good.
would be that was the encouragement that I got. And I didn't believe it. And so I didn't I didn't. Somebody shared a book with me, and the premise of the book, I cannot remember it. No, I do. Sorry, it's called The Power of Who. And
Okay.
the whole like premise of the book is that you know everybody you need to know. It's just figuring out who you need to reach out to and who you need to connect with. And the guy who did it is a executive recruiter for sports, and
Oh,
basically,
cool.
you know, 1,000 people in his contact list. And the premise is that he did like a deep dive analysis on who brought him business. It was something like 12 people. Now, this is
Oh,
a guy
interesting.
who's a believer, and so he kind of draws the parallels between Jesus changed the world with 12. Here's how my business is massive with 12. Okay.
Interesting.
And so I just started reaching out to people that I knew. And with the blessing of my boss, I just started saying, this was all with the context of a transparent conversation with my boss. I know that's not everybody's situation, but I had a transparent conversation with my leader in ministry, and I was like, "Hey, here's what I'm wrestling through," and he journeyed with me through it. Right? He was a fantastic individual, and I love him. And he walked with me alongside that, and I kind of finally landed and said, "I'm going to remain faithful here, but I do want to kind of transition out, right? So I'm going to give you my best effort, but I'm also going to start putting effort towards this." And so I just started reaching out to people, and I started sharing the story of what I was trying to do and what I was looking for. And the key for me was I wasn't asking them for a job. I was asking them to connect me with somebody else. Okay.
Mm.
Here's how that would look. I'd come into somebody, maybe a dad of one of my youth students, and I'd say, "Hey, Josh, I've worked in ministry for 7 years. I have loved every bit of it. My boss is totally aware of the conversation I'm having with you right now. But as you know, my background's in engineering. I've been spending all this time in ministry, and I love the relational aspects of ministry. It is so deep and so rich. But there's a part of my heart and a part of my mind that is not getting that's not being fulfilled right now because I have this sort of engineering brain. And I just have really realized, I miss that. And I want to be able to go solve technical problems in addition to these relationships. So here's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to expand my network into people who would look for guys like me. I have a target search of I want to do some sort of engineering, and I think I'm going to be in sales. I've sometimes heard this called a sales engineer, somebody who's technical but relational. So I'm looking for a title like that. I think I want to be in oil and gas. Do you know anybody who I should connect with that might be interested in someone like that? And that's as easy as it was right there.
That's
Because most of the
so
time,
good.
if these people are actually willing to serve, and mind you, it, God did, Christ came not to be served, but to serve and give his life as a ransom for many. And there are so many strong businessmen in the marketplace who are taking that mentality and that posture, and they're just serving others all day long. Find those people because they'll be like, "Oh, dude, you need to meet this person, you need to meet this person, you need this person." And so I'd have those conversations. They would come up with those people, and then the easiest way that I saw it done and had it done to me, or for me, I should say, was they would send an email and they would say, "Hey, Tom, I want you to meet Jordan. Jordan's trying to enter the workforce and he's looking to connect with high quality guys like you who are helping push his search forward." And that's all they did, right? And so then I would go get coffee with those guys and I would have the same exact conversation with them. hey, here's what I'm doing. I have, this relational background. I'm trying to move a little bit more technical. I'm looking for guys to connect with, who might be willing to hire a guy like me. And eventually, you only need
Right.
one person to hit. And the way it's going to hit is they're going to go like this. Oh, well, we totally hire guys like you. You should go meet our HR representative and like get the interview process started. That's exactly how it worked for me.
I think what you just said is brilliant because I think when most people look at what it takes to get a new job or to break into the marketplace, they think I have to win over so many people. And the reality is you don't. You have to win over one
Yeah.
person, and that's all it takes. How many coffees do you think you got, or how many uh, connections did you reach out to before a job hit?
It was not overwhelming. I'm going to
Yeah,
say maybe like 10, right?
that's awesome.
Yeah, and I will say too, like I had a group of guys who were in my corner, both older than me and like people who were with me in young life that I had brought into this journey, saying, "Here's what I'm doing." And because they were also this like I came to serve posture, they were so helpful. And they were like almost like my kind of board of directors in a sense. Like
That's
they were
awesome.
there coaching me, supporting me, connecting me with others, and it was fantastic. So yeah, not a ton.
That's awesome. Another thing that you said that I think is so important for guys in ministry to understand is that there is a unique advantage from the networking standpoint for people who are in ministry.
Yes.
Most people don't have the networks or the fans or advocates that someone in ministry will, right? Like, I mean, I can imagine anyone who's in youth ministry, the parents of the kids that you minister to, whatever you need, whatever you want, they're willing to help, right? Because you've invested in their child and it's like, hey, if I can connect you, I got you, right? Like, and few people interact with such a wide variety of professions than someone in ministry, right? That you are ministering to kids or you're ministering to people and they can be anything from accountants to attorneys to doctors to sales to engineers. I mean, across the gamut. And so I do feel like there is a networking advantage that ministry people have that other
Yes.
people don't. Was that your experience?
Oh, completely agree. And it's so
Yeah.
funny because the guy who got me a job we did Bible studies at his house with youth kids. Actually, it was my wife did Bible studies
Oh,
at
no
their
way.
with the girls, right? And so I
That's
came
awesome.
over just to like pick her up one day and like hang out. They were doing their girls Bible study thing. And I found out that he worked at a very similar company to one I wanted to go work for. And
Very
so
cool.
I chased him hard. He was very high up, and so he was hard to get a hold of. But I was like almost bothersome about it. I realized now this is a good quality to have in sales. Uh, this was like, hey, here's what I'm trying to do. And eventually he sat down to breakfast with me on like a Saturday morning at super early hour. And I explained what I was trying to do. And we ate at the Cracker Barrel and it was wonderful. And actually it ended up opening the door to like, there were moments where he kind of mentored me and moments where I kind of ministered to him because he had some
Mhm.
things later in life that I got to speak truth into. And yeah, it was funny. It was just one guy. And I like emailed him and then I texted him. Finally, I sent him a letter just thanking him for hosting Bible studies and also be like, hey, I don't know if you've gotten all this other communication from me. I'm trying to get a hold of you, man. And he finally said, yeah. And he introduced me to this HR manager, Alfonso.
That's awesome. I love that. A lot of people in ministry, I think, have a hard time communicating their transferable skills. And I would argue that a lot of people in ministry have phenomenal skills. They like because you have to do so much.
Yes.
How did you figure out how to communicate your transferable skills?
I completely agree with you. I think ministry people are the best people in the world. And I say that as a guy who worked alongside some really good ones and I loved all of them, right? And it
Yeah.
was so potent because we're from all these different walks of life, all these different socioeconomic statuses, and I love them all. And we're all, if you put some business buzzwords on it, everybody has the mission, the vision, the values. Everybody's on the same page. And for me, like if you were to just look at what I did on a day-to-day basis, I'd be like, Bible studies, all this other stuff. But at the end of the day, I'm like coordinating teams, I'm orchestrating things, I'm like, trying to like get this sort of culture built as far as what we're doing. And then top of this, like there was a real change management aspect that was happening at our church because we were going through all this different like change of leadership and what all this stuff. And so to me, I think the world needs more ministry people, to be
Yeah,
honest, because they are fantastic individuals who really, if they're in, right? They're not
yeah,
working for money.
totally. Even marketing, like I think that you think about someone has an idea and says, I want to get 200 high school kids to show up on a Friday night to this thing. You
Yeah.
have to understand your audience. You have to understand what draws them in. You have to understand how to market, how to get to them, and then also how to throw an event that's actually going to mm, be something that they actually talk about. Like there's so many things that ministry people do that people in the corporate world would really benefit from having someone who can throw events or can market or understand or communicate.
Yeah.
There's just a ton of that is transferable.
I think most of the thing that's daunting with ministry people is they probably feel like they have these skills. They just don't know how to express it. Like
Right.
literally, don't know how to write it on their resume to say, I did this event. Well, how do I like rebrand this to be like, I'm not just doing a lock-in. I'm like coordinating an event and marketing it and doing all these things. And honestly, like between a network of people and ChatGPT, there is zero reason for that to stick around today. Like there's a real
Yeah,
business, and if you can, you've got to understand what you're offering here, right? If you're good at
totally.
marketing, and tell them what you're marketing, right?
Yeah.
I'm really good at marketing events or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, 100%. The first person I called was the dad of one of my college students, and he was really successful in business,
Hmm.
but then also was on some boards of ministry. And so I said, you know me, you understand ministry, but you also understand business. What transferable skills do I have, and how do I communicate those? And one of the things that he taught me is that on my resume, he looked at it and he said, so if you say something like I was responsible for the pulpit ministry, no one knows what that means.
Yeah,
He says, but if you say, I write and deliver 40 unique messages per year, he
wow.
says that's something that really stands out because people know what a speech is, they know what a unique speech is, and they understand that to write 40 of them and to deliver 40 of them, there's not a CEO in the world that gives 40 unique speeches a year. They might
Yeah,
speak 40 times, but to actually write from scratch a 30-minute speech every single week, that's a lot.
yeah,
And when I got the job that I got now, which is writing speeches, they I asked the recruiter. I said, what made you pull my resume off the stack? And the first thing she said was, we've never seen anyone who writes and delivers as many speeches per year as you do. And that's when it clicked that I was like, yeah, you could say, oh, I oversee preaching, or I preach, or I oversee the preaching ministry. No one understands that. But when you can quantify it in a way that makes someone go, oh, that's a lot. Or,
yeah,
oh, I understand that in terms that make sense. Or even like, if you say that you oversee a worship gathering, that means nothing. But if you can say, I help execute 52 gatherings a year of 200 plus people, I mean, there are people whose entire job is to pull off two gatherings a year for 200 plus people. And so to be able to do that, and you think about pulling off a Young Life Club or pulling off a youth ministry event or pulling off just a Sunday service, the logistics that go into doing that, which for most ministry people, after a while, just becomes second nature. It's like, oh yeah, this is just like what we do. We pull off 1,000-person gatherings every week. There's a lot of folks who that is a foreign concept, and it takes a lot of effort to try to do the things that kind of become second nature for ministry folks. So I feel like you're spot on that
yeah.
that quantifying of, oh, here's what I do in a way that someone who doesn't know my world can actually understand the
Yes.
impact or the effectiveness of what I do and the metrics that I hit, if you will.
Oh, that is so strong, man. That's so strong. And here's a tidbit of what I approach. So you're talking about you have to be able to really verbalize and communicate your value, is what I hear you saying.
Right. Totally.
So, to those who don't have a framework, here was the framework that I used, right? So, backing up, here's who I am, here's what I'm trying to do, and then I get this interview. Now, I will say, ministry, at least my experience was, we do a fantastic job of leadership development. There's this like sort of inherent understanding of like we are all very gifted in many ways, but there's this dark side to us called sin, and we're all fallen,
Yeah.
which by the way, the working world does not quite understand. But like we have these fantastic gifts, and many times those gifts are also our biggest weakness or our pride or whatever it may be. Okay. And so leadership or ministry did a fantastic job of leadership development and understanding our own blueprint, whether it's I'm taking a disc profile or I'm doing like the Strengths Finder, by
Yeah.
Marcus Buckingham. And so here's what I did, right? So I get the interview and I did the Strengths Finder and I have my 5 strengths: maximizer, relator, woo, activator, learner. And what I would encourage everybody who's listening to this is to be able to verbalize in like
Mhm.
one paragraph, here's my 5 strengths. Because here's how the interview is going to kick off. Hey, Jordan, thanks so much for coming in today. Tell us a little bit about yourself. And they have just lobbed you a softball pitch. Okay. Now, ministry people would be like, oh, here's what I did. And they're going to talk in that ministry language, and people don't understand it. They don't like it, first of all, because it makes them uncomfortable, and they also don't understand it. So what I would do in those moments is I'd say, "Hey, I'm Jordan. I'm a maximizer, which means I like to take things from good to great. I really thrive on relationships and building trust quickly. I'm an activator, so you'll probably see me as being pushy at times, but if we're going to do something, I want to start it now and I'm all in. And I'm a learner, which means I really value personal development and new challenges." And then you just leave it there.
Full stop. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. And you have moved yourself out of the box of being a Christian ministry person, and you have put yourself into here's who I am. These skills, by the way, they can fit anywhere. I have
Totally.
these skills, and you would be very well benefited by paying me a lot of money to be on your team to use them.
Hey, y'all, really quick, if you are a pastor who is thinking about transitioning from the ministry to the marketplace, I personally know how daunting that can be, which is exactly why I created the Marketable Framework. The Marketable Framework is an online course that walks you through the 4 things that you need to successfully transition careers. So we talk about what to write on your resume, how to communicate your value to people who have no clue what you do, how to network, everything in between. And so, as a thank you for watching this, we want to offer you 15% off the course. So if you go to marketableframework.com and use code podcast, you'll get 15% off the course. So again, that's marketableframework.com. Use code podcast to get 15% off the course. Now back to the show.
So I do feel like that is for a lot of people the most daunting question. If someone says, "Hey, tell me about yourself,"
Yeah.
uh, I could go so many directions. Like, what do you want to know? And just to have that in your back pocket as this is how I can communicate my value in a way that's really short, really succinct, but also in a way that they're going to understand, I
Yeah.
think is huge.
Oh, 100%. And to me, it was this way when I would preach or teach. The scariest part was that first like 60 or 90 seconds,
Yeah.
right? So I know if I can come in and I've got that first illustration or here's what we're talking about today, if I have that nailed, then mentally and like anxiety wise, I'm fine. Like, give me
Yeah.
the other 30 minutes, I'm cool. And
I
I
love
felt the
that.
same way in that interview. If like, even if he just asked a question that maybe wasn't related, and I was like, well, I'm a Mac, and I had to like pull it. I totally did it unashamedly, just totally did it. Hey, what
That's
what brings
awesome.
you what brings you in today? Well, I'm whatever, and I would totally rip it off. And I just figured you guys might want to learn about that.
That's hilarious. What was that interview process like from like start to finish, right? You most likely you had some sort of recruiter, some sort of HR rep who wanted to kind of do like an initial interview. What were some of the types of questions that you came up against specifically about you transitioning from ministry to the marketplace?
Yeah, a lot of it was technical.
Mm,
A
okay.
lot of it was technical because my industry was technical. I mean, we're selling engineered solutions, and to which I would say this of like the hardest part to every company is hiring. The most expensive thing to every company is hiring quality people because turnover is expensive.
Yeah.
So to me, I've always been like, do you have the character? Do you have the chemistry? Okay, cool. We can train your competence, right?
Mm,
So I would just really hammer down on like, I have character, right? Here's where I'm coming from. I'm leaving gracefully. I have chemistry. I love to build trust with people. I'm coming from a high performing team, and I can guarantee you that I will find a way. I'm also really needing this job. I will find a way to get along with these people. Competence. Could you take somebody with these skill sets and get them up to speed? Of which nobody's going to say no to. Like, it's
right.
incriminating for them to say no. to be like, actually, we really suck at taking good people and making them better. No, they're not going to say that, you know? And so they would be like, oh, yeah, for sure. We have a 1 week training program to get you up to speed. Okay, fantastic. Let's do this then.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so important because yeah, I think what makes HR people most nervous about taking a chance on someone from ministry is the learning curve. It
Yeah.
because there's this gap of, I mean, I like you and you seem great, but can you actually do the job that we have? And I'm curious for you, I mean, to go into like a sales engineering type of role, I mean that's a legitimately technical thing.
Mhm.
Do you think if you didn't have the engineering degree, they would have taken a chance on you?
I would say yes,
Really?
because go back to the prior, I would say yes, they're going to take a chance on me because of who recommended me. The guy who recommended me was very high up within the company. So I think they were sort of voluntold to give me an interview. And I think it was going to be, I know this now, but I think I was like, they were just trying to figure out which box to put me in.
Yeah. That's so interesting. So I think that's a huge takeaway because what you just said, or at least what I heard, was that the network that you tap into and the people that refer you can actually that can outweigh this the skepticism about, do you actually have the skills right now to do this job, so that like really the network has a uh much higher weight, I guess you could say, in whether or not you get a job.
Agree completely. That's exactly what I'm saying.
That's awesome. What's it been like since the shift, right? And I'm curious, both professionally and spiritually, when you think back to the, financially stressed, we're not making enough, we have a kiddo on the way. When you think about kind of where y'all were now versus where you were then versus where you are now, what has that shift been like?
Yeah. Well, I'll say spiritually, it's been really, really healthy for me
Cool.
because I didn't. My joke for the long time, for the longest time, was when people ask me what I do, I would say I'm a professional Christian or I'm a professional role model, is what I would say, because I was dealing with high school kids, and so I'm
Yeah.
like, church is paying me to be a Christian for these high school kids, and I would joke about it or whatever, but uh, I didn't realize in my own heart I was getting to the point like in worship and all these other places where like I felt like the burden of leadership and the burden of like I just felt like all eyes were on me all
Mm,
the time, you know, and that's like a heavy load to bear. And so I'd be like in worship, wanting to just like seek the Lord and being like, do I raise my hands here? And having this weird like catch 22 of like, if I raise my hands, people are going to look at me. And I just got really insecure about that, you know?
yeah.
And there's all these different touch points of little things like that where I feel like my faith was becoming more about the kind of the picture I was presenting rather than this actual relationship with God, you know? And so I really was becoming a professional Christian in the
Yeah.
sense that I felt like this was my job. And so when I left professional or like vocational ministry, it felt so freeing to me to step into a worship service and not feel like everybody was looking at me, you know?
Mm,
It was life-giving. And there are some churches that like allow people to go visit other churches like, once a quarter or whatever. My church did not do that. And so like this was it for me. This is where I got
yeah.
fed. And like the world just kind of very quickly shrunk down. And so for that to get removed, it just really felt like a burden was off my shoulders. So
Yeah.
I loved that because it just at that point it felt like instead of having God's grace and showing it to everybody and saying, "Hey, come get you some of this,"
Yeah.
it like this is God's gift to me, right?
Yeah.
And it felt like the Lord was so much more personal. And
Yeah.
I know that's probably not everybody's case. Some people leave ministry gracefully, some don't.
Yeah.
But for me, it was very, very healthy. And I will say too, I would caution people against thinking the grass is greener on the other
Mm,
side of ministry because there are so many wonderful things about ministry that are irreplaceable in the workplace. And in my mind, I was solving for one problem, which was I just have got to go get some more money for my family. And that problem got solved. I think
yeah.
I made 75K for my first job, and I
Yeah.
thought that like all the dollars in the world. Like
Just
they had
rolling.
taken a wheelbarrow and brought it to me with all the money. And so it's solved my pain point, right? But then there's all these other places where I was like, oh man, like I took that for granted, you
Yeah.
know? Like, that was something that I just totally didn't understand was of value to me, of
Yeah.
like having all these people who are believers was this wonderful thing that you will not get in the workplace.
Yeah. What's something else that you feel like is unique to people in ministry that if you were to go marketplace, you're actually going to lose this, and this is just something to savor if you're in ministry?
Um, to me, it really comes down to the whole like everybody is on the same page. We all,
Yeah.
everybody there is belief driven, and it really is a superpower because for people to be belief driven, you have these teams that are on the same page, they have the same mission, they have the same vision, they have the same values. I mean, we had people who made no money, and we had retirees that were on staff that retired with like, nine-figure 401ks. Like they were flush with cash.
Right. Yeah.
We are all working together to push the mission forward. And there's a power that comes from that, right? To be
Yeah.
like, this old guy who's loaded is here not because he has to, but because he wants to. And he has a
Totally.
wealth of wisdom in some way that I just have never been experienced to, you know? And I found myself really missing that
Yeah.
because that is strong. And my experience when I step into the workplace was it was a cubicle
Yeah.
farm. You know this term, right?
Totally.
Just halogen lights everywhere, quiet. If you've seen the movie Office Space, that was my first office.
That's
And
hilarious.
I do recall stepping in there and being like, God has given me this job to kill me. That's what happened. Because I would step in, they trained me. They trained me inside on the product. They trained. Let me back up there. They trained me.
Yeah.
They're basically, hey, you go sit in the corner and behave. Is basically what that looks like. So I sat in the corner and behaved for like 5 months, and I was like, dude, this is the thing I wanted to escape. They're trying to punish me. Oh, it was bad.
That's hilarious. Yeah, no, I mean that's for sure a shock. Going from a highly relational role where you're meeting with people all the time to hey, just go sit in the corner and behave is yeah, that's a big it's a big trade off. Like you do get paid, but you also have to lose a little bit of that kind of relational aspect of your last role for sure.
And at least in my ministry experience, everybody was really cool and really interesting. And
Yeah.
then I step over into the working world, and like literally, I'm sitting catty corner from a guy who's 65, never been married, still lives with his mom, and all he wants to talk to me is about his cats. And I'm just like, no thanks, you know? And he sits there and listens to conservative talk radio all day. And it was cruel and unusual.
No headphones, just like over a speaker, like listen to it.
Just yeah, just quiet enough to where you'd be like, "Is he playing the radio? He's playing the radio." Rush Limbaugh's on again. Thanks so much.
Yeah, dude. Office dynamics are hilarious because there are like certain cultures that are like really cool and everyone's super chill, and then you have other cultures and you're like, what world am I stepping into?
Yeah,
This is bizarre.
dude. This guy, the particular individual I'm thinking of, um, he was friendly, so we were friends. But I had a real problem with him at first because he was an older guy, like,
Yeah.
and he would always fall asleep after lunch, and I had the biggest problem with that. He would take like a little 30-minute siesta at his desk with his hands on his thing, acting like he's working, hands on the mouse. I'm like, you're not just stay in your car or something, you know? But then he would turn on the wrestling ball and like, okay, this guy, this is the most emblematic story of all time. So he lived with his elderly mother, and I'm not making this up. His cat died one weekend, and he told me about it. And I was like, oh man, so did you have to like run her up to the vet, or how does that work, you know? And he put her in a trash bag in the freezer. And I'm like, I'm like, how do I respond to this? You know, it's a bunch of moments like that where I'm like, oh, your cat died, you put it in the freezer. Man, that's tough. You know, I never knew what to do with them, man.
Yeah, that's like the point in the conversation where it's like, I've got nothing.
Yeah,
I don't know
yeah,
which way to take it. I don't. Wow. I'm sorry,
yeah,
man. That hurts.
yeah, yeah.
That's
Sorry
hilarious.
you loved your cat. Yeah.
All right. Last question for you. If there's someone listening who's kind of on the fence and they're like, man, I really don't know where to go. Like
Mhm.
maybe I feel financially stressed, maybe I feel a little disillusioned with kind of where things are. I think it might be time for a change, but I'm not completely sure. What advice do you have someone who is just trying to discern clarity on which way to go?
I would say at my church right now, we have the saying that healthy you equals healthy us. And everybody's always heard, I think it was Rick Warren who said that hurt people hurt people.
Yeah.
And so to me, if you have the awareness that you're operating out of a place of hurt,
Mm,
that's one thing. Okay. So I would work really hard to get yourself healthy because when people are in a hurt position, they really don't make wise decisions.
that's
And
good.
like we said, there's pros and cons to either side of this thing. So it really has to be like you're moving forward with what is good, what's wise, and what is loving. And ultimately, like, where do I feel like God is leading me, you know?
Yeah.
And so to me, I'd say get yourself to a place of health first and then make your decision. And also just realize your trade-offs. Like I remember so fondly where I worked in ministry. And it's funny because I would look over the fence at these people in the working world. I'd be like, man, they've got it all together. Obviously, this, billion-dollar company places a priority on leadership. They don't. The grass
Mm,
is not greener. It's just different. So find your heart. What's your why? Go do that thing.
yeah. That's really good. Dude, I think it's spot on. Yeah, because we'd even talked earlier about when you're coming out of college and you're doing the ministry thing, and you have friends that are going off and making six figures right out of school, working for a big company, and you're looking at it and you're like, dude, I'm like barely scraping by. I feel so behind. And the longer you do ministry, the more you feel behind oftentimes. So it's really easy to get caught up and think, oh, if I just had that. But you realize it's like what you gain financially, you do lose in some other things. And so I think the grass is greener thing is always
Yeah.
important to keep in mind.
Yeah, and I know we chatted about that a little bit too, but I do want to just say, like, man, the leadership experience that I gained through ministry was invaluable. I mean, where else is somebody going to toss the keys to a 25-year-old and be
Totally.
like, you drive, we don't have the space. You drive. I don't do it. And like very literally, I drove kids to Colorado, I had to. But to me, it's just so funny because that experience, like I really do feel, I think it was Moses in the desert where God was like forming him and uh, you know, giving him convictions on what leadership looks like. And then I come over into the secular world and I didn't realize, oh, I do have these convictions and my experiences are beneficial and I have a unique thing to offer in certain arenas that these guys don't even understand one bit. And
Yeah.
it was incredible for me to have that experience. I really do think my leadership journey is so much more positively impacted and developed than guys who just came out and started doing the thing.
Yeah. That's a great call. It's pretty rare for like a 26, 27-year-old person to be, managing staff and volunteers and overseeing, a ministry that, I mean, it's a level of leadership and a level of ownership that's pretty rare to get at that age that a lot of guys in ministry get. But outside of that, it's like you got to wait till you're 40 to,
Yeah.
before someone entrusts you with a team of that size.
Yeah. Well, and doubling down on that a little bit in the ministry world, everybody's heard the phrase leadership is influence by
Mm,
John Maxwell. In the ministry world, it's all influence, right?
yeah.
This kid doesn't have to listen to you. This coworker isn't forced to help you. I mean, like literally, if you're able to move things forward, it's because you are masterful at leadership.
Yeah.
Compare that with compare that with the working world where people have to obey you. And by the
Yeah.
way, all good employees are self-employed, right?
Mm,
If you're good at your job and you're a quality person, you can work wherever the heck you want to, right? Everybody who's good is self-employed because they will decide what they want to go do. But
interesting.
in the secular environment, right? These people have to obey you. But if they don't like you, then they'll just leave, right? And
Right.
that happens all the time. And it's those bosses that are wonderful at influencing people to get things done, not bossing, not commanding, not lording, right? But influencing people to get things done. Those are the ones who are the good bosses that you
Yeah.
love working for. And to those who are listening right here, everybody can remember the bosses they've worked for and who was good and who was bad. So
Yeah.
what if it's your calling to go be a fantastic boss in the marketplace, right?
Yeah.
Because you can impact this team of three, five, eight, whatever it may be, in a way that is asymmetrical to whatever talk you gave at youth group, right?
Totally. Dude, I think that is such a great call out because I do think what's really interesting about the typical leadership structure in the corporate world is someone who's a really good individual contributor then gets to manage people, right? And it's not based on skill set per se, right? So like, I think sales is a classic example. Who
Yeah.
manages sales people? It's the person who is the highest performing seller. All of a sudden, well, we got to do something to keep him happy. So let's take our best seller and make them a manager. And oftentimes it's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. The skill set they had to sell isn't the skill set to manage. And so you have
Yeah.
a really poor manager who is like, well, but I was great at sales, so surely you're going to be great at managing people. And it's like those are two different skills. Whereas you actually might have your lowest performing seller would actually be a pretty phenomenal manager because of the skill set and the idea that if I'm really good at this skill, then my next rung on the ladder is just to manage people with that
Yeah.
skill can can create some real inconsistency in the quality of leadership. And to your point, I think a lot of people from ministry have such leadership experience that they have a unique perspective on leading and managing people and influencing that maybe folks don't get when they just kind of get thrust into management because they were the best at their last job.
Yeah. Well said. Well said.
Anyway, dude, thank you so much for chatting. This has been invaluable. I hope that anyone who listens to this is like, wow, I have a lot of clarity on what to do next because I know that actually like making that leap really is an act of faith in and of itself. And so I appreciate you sharing all of your
Absolutely.
wisdom.
Absolutely, bro. And to anybody who is listening and you're thinking, Jordan talked a lot about he needs to get this network of people and then kind of deploy them for his, purposes of what he's trying to do here. And then the whole maximizer, strengths finder thing. If you're looking for that network, I am available to you because I love to help people. I think ministry people are fantastic. I think the world needs to see more ministry people on their teams because they are utility people who, when they are in, they are all in. And to me, if I could assemble a team of ministry people, it'd be like the Avengers, these skill sets and everybody looks a little different and everybody's got some different backgrounds, but at the end of the day, like saddle up and let's ride. So just gonna throw that out there to the group. I'm available to anybody who needs it.
I love that. What's the best way to contact you? Is it like LinkedIn, Instagram?
Either. Yeah.
Yeah.
Jordan P. Janes on Instagram or Jordan Janes, Jan, like Nancy, ES on LinkedIn. Whatever you need, just shoot me a message and I'll help you however I can.
And also a little shout out for your Instagram, dude. You're like posting a lot more kind of health wellness stuff
Yeah.
recently. You've been on like a wellness journey, right?
Yeah, trying to. So my wife has Hashimoto's, which is an autoimmune disorder.
Oh
And
wow.
then okay, so backing up a little bit. So we went down to Houston for this job that I got,
Okay.
and all of our kids down there ended up. Our third kid was adopted, and he's high functioning autism, so he's on the spectrum. And anyways, we've seen a real marked difference by like kind of removing some of the things that are conventional products from his life.
Yeah.
Um, and just like behavior wise and some of the emotional regulation, it's been really good. So not to be too crunchy and put my tinfoil, but I'm like, is this real? So yeah, trying to raise some awareness there.
Dude, that's awesome. Dude, thanks for stepping by, man.
You're welcome, man. Thank you for your time.